So, I'll start. Here we go. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied. As long as the Negro remains the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality, we can never be satisfied. As long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the hotels of the cities and the motels of byways, we cannot be satisfied. As long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one, we cannot be satisfied. As long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs that state for whites only, we cannot be satisfied. As long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believe he has nothing for which to vote, no, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. And so I say to you today, my sisters and brothers, that even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama with this vicious racist, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord will be revealed and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. And with this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring." And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so, let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the hiking Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestant and Catholic, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. You know, I get emotional. That speech. You know, I was young when Dr. King was passed. I was about 9 years old, but I remembered him. And my college entertainment was his speeches. Yeah. When I was in school, and somebody was asking me today what was my favorite Dr. King speech, and I just had to tell them it was a drum major instead. Yeah. And that was the actual time that he actually preached his own funeral. The mountaintop. That was a lot of stuff in that speech, the mountaintop. Yes, and I'm going to start in a place. No, let me back up. I have a dream. Remember the very first thing I said? We'll never be satisfied. As long as the Negro remains a victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. 50 years ago, Dr. King passed. What do we have happening here today still? Yeah. To our brothers and sisters. Yes, sir. Yeah. There are some things that needs to start happening, the bottom line. But the mountaintop. You know, Paul said it, when I would do good, evil is present around me. So when you hear this now, I had to learn this past week. So I hope I don't mess it up, y'all. Pray for me. Thank you. You know, several years ago, I was in New York City autographing the first book that I'd written. And while autographing books, a demented black woman came up. The only question I heard from her was, "You, Martin Luther King?" And I was looking down writing and I said, "Yes." The next minute I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I'd been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon. And the blade had gone through, and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you drown in your own blood. That's the end of it. Came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had nearly sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in the wheelchair in the hospital. And they allowed me to read some of the letters that came in. And from all over the states and the world, kind letters came in. I read a few. One of them I will never forget. I received a letter from the president and the vice president, but I've forgotten what those telegrams said. I had received a visit and a letter from the governor of the state of New York, but I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter. It came from a little girl, a young girl, who was a student at the White Plains High School. And it simply said, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School. And she said, and while it should not matter, I'd like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. And I'm simply writing you to say I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze. And I want to say to you today that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. Because if I had sneezed, wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. Because I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream and calling into being calling a nation to dig those wells of democracy dug deep by our founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation and interstate travel. If I had sneezed, wouldn't have been around here in 1962 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1963 when black people in Birmingham, Alabama decided to change the course of this nation, brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had if I had sneezed. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement down there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who were suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. And they were telling me, now, it doesn't matter now. It really doesn't matter what happens now. You know, we left Atlanta this morning, and as we started on the plane, there were 6 of us. And the pilot said over the public address system, we're sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane. And to be sure that all the luggage was checked, and to be sure that nothing was wrong with the plane, we had the airplane protected and guarded all night long. And then I got into Memphis. And some were saying about the threats, or talking about the threats that were out, or what would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what's going to happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. And like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. And I want to tell you tonight that I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming